Not all scary things come from imagination. Across the vast landscape of America, there are places not found on any map, and memories people try desperately to forget, but can't. From frozen towns where time stands still, to forests so deep no one dares return, horrifying stories continue to echo through generations. These are not movies, not urban legends. They're real. They're the moment you saw something at the end of the hallway, the voice that called your name when you were alone. In this video, you'll hear some of the scariest true horror stories from across America, disturbing accounts that blur the line between reality and nightmare. You don't need to believe in the supernatural. You just need to listen, because once you do, you'll never see the world the same way again. Picture yourself standing alone in a forest, the silence so deep it feels like a weight on your chest. You think you're free, hidden from the world's chaos. But what if the darkness has already found you, waiting, watching, with eyes that see through your soul? Last summer I needed to break free. The city's relentless hum, honking cars, shouting voices, the endless scroll of screens, had worn me down to a frayed thread. I craved silence, a night where the stars were my only company. So I packed a tent, a sleeping bag, some food, and drove an hour to a forest I'd never set foot in before. My map showed a trail, remote and rarely used, perfect for someone like me who wanted to vanish for a day. I found the trailhead at dusk, a lonely dirt path flanked by pines that stood like silent sentinels. No cars, no voices, just me and the wilderness. But solitude has a price, doesn't it? I parked on a crumbling shoulder of the road, slung my backpack over my shoulders and stepped into the forest. The air was heavy with the scent of pine sap and wet earth, each breath a reminder of how far I was from home. My boots crunched softly on the trail, the sound swallowed by the vastness around me. For 2 hours, I walked deeper, the path narrowing, until it was little more than a whisper of trampled grass. Trees loomed taller, their branches weaving a canopy that blocked the fading light. I wasn't worried, not yet. I'd planned this escape, packed enough for one night. But plans are fragile things in a place like this. Then I saw it, a shape that didn't belong. A cabin, low and hunched, sat in a clearing like a scar on the forest's skin. My heart stuttered. I hadn't seen it on my way in. How could I have walked right past it? Its walls were gray, splintered, coated in moss that looked like it was strangling the wood. The doorway was a black void. No door, just an open wound inviting me closer. Step inside, it seemed to murmur. Uncover what I hide. My pulse quickened, a drumbeat in my ears. I stood frozen, torn between turning back and the pull of something I couldn't name. Curiosity, reckless and sharp, won out. I crept forward, each step sinking into the damp earth. The air turned colder, biting at my skin, as if the cabin exhaled a warning. I peered inside, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The beam revealed a graveyard of forgotten things. Rusted cans scattered like bones, a torn blanket crumpled in a corner, a chair broken and sprawled as if it had been thrown. The smell hit me next. Mold, decay, something metallic. Was this abandoned or was it waiting? I backed away, my skin crawling, when a heavy thud broke the silence. My breath caught. I spun toward the doorway, and there he was. A man, maybe 40, stood in the shadows of the cabin. His clothes hung in tatters stained with dirt and time. His face was gaunt, but his eyes, God, his eyes were hollow twin pits that seemed to swallow the light. They locked onto mine, unblinking, emotionless, as if he wasn't human but a husk wearing a man's skin. Run, my mind screamed. Run, now. Sorry, I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. I turned and hurried back to the trail, my legs unsteady. I glanced back once. He hadn't moved, still standing in the doorway, his gaze a blade slicing through the distance. The forest felt different now, alive in a way that made my stomach churn. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the sky. I walked for an hour, maybe more, my eyes darting to every shadow, every rustle of leaves. Was he following me? The sun was gone, the sky a bruised purple that bled into black. I couldn't go back to my car. The trail was too faint, my mind too scrambled. I found a small clearing, hands shaking as I pitched my tent. I'd planned to build a fire, cook something, feel the warmth of normalcy. But now, I just wanted to disappear. I crawled into the tent, zipped it shut, and lay there, my breath loud in the confined space. The forest was no longer silent. The wind wove through the trees, a low moan that sounded like voices just out of reach. "You're alone," it whispered. "Or are you?" My mind replayed that man's face, those hollow eyes boring into me. I'd seen something in them. Not anger, not curiosity, but something worse. Hunger. I tried to sleep, but every snap of a twig, every shift of the wind, jolted me awake. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time blurred in the dark. I don't know what woke me. Maybe a sound, maybe a feeling. But when my eyes opened, the darkness was absolute. A living thing pressing against me. My heart pounded, loud enough to drown out the forest's hum. Then I saw it, a shadow at the tent's entrance, the flap half unzipped. A face hovered there, shrouded in black, but those eyes, those hollow eyes glowed like embers in the void. "He's here. He found you." I scrambled back, my sleeping bag tangling around my legs, a scream trapped in my throat. The figure jerked back, footsteps pounding away into the night. I fumbled for my flashlight, my hands slick with sweat. The beam shook as I swept it across the trees. Nothing, just branches, shadows, the endless dark. My chest heaved, each breath a battle. I tore down the tent, fabric ripping in my haste, and shoved everything into my pack. I ran, the trail barely visible under a sliver of moonlight. Branches snagged at my jacket, their tips like fingers grazing my skin. "He's behind you. Don't look back." My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. The forest seemed to stretch forever, a maze designed to trap me. I stumbled onto the dirt road, my car a beacon in the dark. My keys slipped twice before I got the door open. I threw my pack inside, slammed the door, and locked it, my eyes scanning the tree line. Nothing moved, but I felt him. Those eyes watching from somewhere just out of sight. I drove, the rear view mirror a constant check for headlights, for shadows, for anything. The city lights were a relief, but they didn't erase the weight in my chest. That night, I locked every door, every window, and sat in the dark, my flashlight clutching my side. Sleep never came. Those hollow eyes were burned into my mind, a stain I couldn't wash out. I've never gone back to that forest. I don't talk about it, not because I'm afraid of being judged, but because saying it aloud makes it real. And some things are too terrifying to be real. Sometimes in the dead of night, I wake with a start, certain I hear footsteps outside my window. I check the locks, peer into the dark, and see nothing. But I feel it. Those eyes, waiting for me, to step back into the wilderness to finish what they started. What was that cabin hiding? Why was he there, watching, waiting? I'll never know. The forest keeps its secrets, and I'm not brave enough to ask. But I know this: I wasn't alone that night, and maybe, just maybe, I never will be again. Under a sky streaked with the last light of day, I stood by a river that whispered secrets, secrets I'd soon wish I'd never heard. My name is Caleb, a restless soul from a concrete jungle, seeking solace in the wild. Last summer I drove 4 hours to my parents' quaint town, a place where time seemed to slow, nestled in a valley of endless green. They welcomed me with warm hugs, but my heart yearned for solitude. I'd planned a solo camping trip by a small river, a hidden gem I'd found on an old map, a thin, unmarked trail leading to its banks, a place untouched by the clamor of tourists. Feel the earth beneath your feet, Caleb. Let it ground you. I slung my backpack over my shoulder and set off, the trail a narrow scar through towering pines, their needles carpeting the ground in a soft, rust-colored blanket. 4 hours of hiking brought me to the river as dusk settled, the sky a canvas of deep indigo and fading gold. The water flowed gently, its surface catching the last glimmers of light, murmuring a song that felt ancient, almost alive. I chose a spot on a mossy bank, the ground cool and yielding, and pitched my tent with practiced ease. Build your sanctuary, Caleb. Make it safe. I gathered twigs, their bark rough against my palms, and struck a match, the flame blooming into a small fire. Its glow painted the trees in shades of amber, a fragile warmth against the creeping chill of night. I sat, the river's song weaving through the silence, until a faint rustle broke the spell. My pulse quickened, eyes scanning the darkness. From the shadows, a man emerged, his outline sharp against the firelight. He raised a hand, a casual wave, and stepped closer, a smile stretching across his face. "Evening," he said, his voice smooth but tinged with something I couldn't place. "I'm Victor, camping not far from here." He was in his 30s, his clothes stained with earth, his hair a tangled mess, as if the forest had claimed him long ago. His eyes, though, were unnerving, too bright like they held a light of their own, reflecting the fire in a way that made my skin crawl. "Who is he, Caleb? Why here, of all places?" I nodded, forcing a smile, though my gut twisted. Victor crouched by the fire, uninvited, and began to speak about the river's history, the stars above, his love for the solitude of the wild. His words were polished, almost rehearsed, but there was a hollowness to them, like a mask slipping just enough to reveal something darker beneath. I responded sparingly, my voice tight, every instinct screaming that this encounter was wrong. "You're overthinking, Caleb. He's just a lonely camper." After what felt like an eternity, he stood, his smile unwavering. "Rest well," he said, and walked off along the riverbank, his flashlight casting a pale beam. I watched, expecting the light to fade with distance, but it didn't. It stopped, then vanished as if the night had swallowed it whole. My breath hitched. Had he turned it off? Was he still there, lurking just beyond the fire's reach? I smothered the flames, the embers hissing in protest, and retreated to my tent. "Close your eyes, Caleb. Let the river lull you." But sleep was a distant dream. The river's gentle murmur now sounded like a warning, each ripple a whisper of something. Watching, waiting. I lay still, ears straining for any sound, a branch snapping, a footfall in the dark. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the thud of my own heartbeat. Is Victor out there, hidden in the shadows? My mind drifted to my uncle's old stories, tales he'd told by the fireplace when I was a boy. He spoke of a river spirit, a trickster who took the form of a man, luring travelers to the water's edge where the current claimed their souls. Just stories, Caleb, nothing more. But the memory planted a seed of dread, its roots curling deep into my chest. Morning came, heavy with mist that clung to the ground like a shroud. I crawled from the tent, the air damp and cold, the river stretching before me like a silver vein through the forest. I decided to hike along its banks, hoping daylight would banish the unease. Search for signs, Caleb. Proof Victor was real. But the river gave nothing away. No campsites, no charred remains of a fire, not even a footprint where he'd walked. How could that be? The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches twisted like skeletal fingers, casting shadows that danced on the water's surface. I told myself he'd camped deeper in the woods, but the thought felt hollow, a fragile shield against a growing fear. As dusk returned, painting the sky in shades of violet, I trudged back to my campsite, the tent a lonely sentinel on the riverbank. Light the fire, Caleb. Reclaim the night. But before I could, a figure sat by my unlit fire pit, his presence a violation of the solitude I'd sought. Victor. My heart lurched, a cold sweat breaking across my skin. "You're back," he said, his voice too eager, his smile too wide, like a crack in a porcelain mask. "Found something down the river, you've got to see it." His eyes gleamed, unblinking, a predator's gaze cloaked in false warmth. I gripped the tent pole, my knuckles white. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, trembling with the weight of my fear. "Come with me," he urged, standing and motioning toward the dark water, his movements fluid, almost hypnotic. "Don't go, Caleb. Stay rooted." I shook my head, the words spilling out in a rush. "I'm exhausted, Victor, maybe tomorrow." His smile faltered, the edges twitching, and he stepped closer, repeating, "It's worth it, I promise." The air thickened, the river's song now a low, guttural hum vibrating through the ground. "Run, Caleb, now." I locked eyes with him, time stretching into an endless moment, and saw something shift in his gaze. A primal hunger, ancient and insatiable. "No," I said, my voice steadier, defiant. His face darkened, the smile erased, and he asked one last time, his tone sharp as a blade. "You sure about that?" I didn't answer, my silence a shield. He turned, stalking toward the river, his shadow stretching long and jagged across the ground. My eyes caught a glint, a bulge beneath his shirt, the unmistakable shape of a pistol tucked into his waistband. The sight was a jolt, my breath shallow and ragged. He's hiding it. Why? I'd seen hikers carry guns for protection, but never like this, concealed, shrouded in secrecy as if its purpose was darker than defense. The river's hum grew louder, a chorus of warnings I could no longer ignore. "Get out, Caleb, before he turns back." I scrambled to pack, my hands trembling as I shoved gear into my bag, the fabric of the tent catching on my fingers. The river roared in my ears, its voice now a scream, urging me to flee. I tore down the Sayas trail, branches clawing at my arms, their sharp tips drawing thin lines of blood. The forest closed in, a labyrinth of shadows, but I didn't stop, not until I reached my car 4.5 hours later, my lungs burning, my body slick with sweat. "You're safe now, Caleb. You made it." I drove until the trees gave way to open road, the river's voice fading with every mile, but its echo lingered, a haunting melody in the back of my mind. Days later, I sat in my apartment, the city's hum a stark contrast to the river's whispers. "You escaped, Caleb, but did you really?" The more I thought about Victor, the more his face blurred in my memory, his smile twisting into something inhuman. I remembered my uncle's tale again. The river spirit, the trickster who wore a man's face, luring the unwary to their doom. Was Victor that thing, or just a man with a darker intent? I couldn't be sure, but one truth gnawed at me. He'd been too close, his presence too deliberate. He'd followed me, watched me, waited for the moment to strike. If I'd gone to the river, I'd be gone. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a cold certainty that I'd escaped something far worse than I could imagine. Even now, in the safety of my home, I hear the rivers whisper in my dreams. And somewhere, deep in that forest, Victor, or whatever he was, waits by the water, his smile a lure for the next soul to wander too close. The forest was our sanctuary, until a single sound turned it into a nightmare. 2 summers ago, I learned that even the places you trust can hide horrors that claw at your soul. My name's Ethan, and this is the story of a camping trip with my best friend Caleb, a night that started with laughter and ended with a truth I'll never fully know. Feel the weight of that moment, when the world you know shifts, and the dark whispers secrets you're not ready to hear. Caleb and I had been inseparable since college, our friendship forged in late-night talks and shared dreams of escaping the grind. Every summer we'd leave the city behind, driving 2 hours to a forest that felt like home. It wasn't about conquering trails or chasing thrills. It was about the quiet, sitting by a fire, the stars above, the world reduced to the crackle of logs and the hum of crickets. That year, we chose a familiar clearing, where pines stood tall, their branches weaving a canopy that filtered the sunlight into golden threads. Picture it, the air thick with the scent of sap and earth, our tents pitched on a bed of needles, the forest alive with gentle sounds. For 3 days we lived in that bubble, cooking over the fire, trading stories of our college days, laughing until our sides ached. Caleb, with his easy grin and knack for starting fires, was the heart of it all. He'd taught me everything about these woods, from reading trails to spotting constellations. Feel that warmth, the kind that makes you believe nothing can go wrong, Anai. The 4th day, as the sun sank, casting long shadows across the clearing, we decided to pack up the next morning. The sky burned orange, then faded to gray, and the forest grew still as if it knew something we didn't. Something was watching. Caleb suggested one last fire, and I nodded, pulling out food to cook. He offered to gather sticks, his figure blending into the trees as the light dimmed. See him disappear, swallowed by the lengthening shadows, his footsteps fading. I busied myself with the food, the scent of spices curling through the air. But as minutes passed, 10, then 20, a flicker of unease stirred. Caleb was never gone this long. He knew these woods like his own backyard. He'd navigated them since he was a kid. 30 minutes. No sign. Feel the doubt creep in, a cold finger tracing your spine. I called his name, my voice sharp against the silence. Nothing. The forest, once vibrant, was now a void, its sounds snuffed out. 40 minutes. My chest tightened, thoughts spiraling. Was he hurt? Lost? I grabbed our lamp, its beam weak and trembling, and paced the campsite, shouting, until my throat burned. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the edges of the light. 50 minutes. I tried to rationalize. He'd wandered too far, he'd be back. But the silence was oppressive, a living thing pressing against me. An hour. Desperate, I decided to start the fire, hoping its glow would guide him. Imagine the flames, leaping against the night, their warmth a lie against the growing dread. I gathered sticks, my hands shaking, and struck a match. The fire roared, but it only deepened the darkness beyond, turning the woods into a sea of shadows. I sat by the flames, ears straining for any sound. A footstep, a call, nothing. Just as I stood to search, a sound ripped through the night. Gunshot, sharp and brutal, echoing from the direction Caleb had gone. Feel your heart stop, the world tilting, the air thick with fear. It was unmistakable, a violent intrusion in a place that held no weapons. Neither of us had a gun. The forest turned against me, its trees no longer shelter but a cage hiding whatever had fired that shot. Was Caleb hurt? Dead? Or was someone else out there watching? My mind raced, conjuring images of blood on the leaves, Caleb's body crumpled in the dark. I grabbed the lamp, its light flickering, and stumbled toward the sound, each step a battle, against the urge to run the other way. The woods were alive with menace, branches snagging my clothes, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. Then, footsteps. Heavy, frantic, crashing through the underbrush. I froze, the lamp shaking in my grip, its beam barely cutting through the black. A figure emerged, running straight at me. Time slowed. His face broke into the light. Caleb, his eyes wild, his breath ragged, dirt smeared across his cheeks. I'd never seen him like that, not in all our years. His confidence shattered, replaced by raw terror. Feel the shock, the way it roots you to the ground. "Ethan, we have to go now," he whispered, his voice a blade. I tried to speak, but he grabbed my arm, pulling me back to camp. We threw our backpacks together, abandoning the tents, the fire still burning. As we ran, he spoke in broken gasps. Someone was out there, had a gun, told me to follow him. Picture it, Caleb, alone, a stranger's weapon pressed against him, forcing him deeper into the dark. He said he'd escaped, but his eyes held something else. Guilt, maybe, or a secret he couldn't voice. We fled through the forest, the lamps, light dancing wildly, every shadow a threat. The woods were alive, their whispers now screams, the air thick with the promise of pursuit. I kept looking back, expecting a figure to emerge, gun in hand. We reached the car, collapsing inside, the doors locked tight. As we drove, the forest loomed in the rearview mirror, its secrets buried in the night. Caleb stared out the window, his hands clenched, his silence louder than any words. I pressed him. What happened? Who was it? But he only muttered, "I got away, that's enough." His voice was hollow, his face a mask. Days later, the memory of that night clung to me like fog. Let the fear sink in, the way it lingers, twisting. Every quiet moment, I replayed it, the gunshot, Caleb's terror, the questions he wouldn't answer. He changed after that, his easy laugh gone, his love for the woods replaced by a quiet dread. Once I pushed him, desperate for the truth. His eyes darkened and he said, "I did what I had to." What did he mean? Did he fight the man? Take the gun? Was the gunshot his? The thought chilled me, a shadow I couldn't escape. The forest still haunts me, its beauty now a mask for something darker, a reminder that even the places we love can hide truths too heavy to bear. Caleb and I never went back. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Imagine a fire glowing in the heart of a forest, its light a fragile promise of safety. You're locked inside your RV, the world shut out, the night yours alone. But what if the dark is watching, circling, its hunger growing with every flicker of your flame? The woods behind my house were my sanctuary. Growing up, I'd wander their trails, a kid lost in daydreams among oaks and maples. As an adult, my old RV, a creaking, rust-streaked beast, let me reclaim that magic. It wasn't fancy, but it carried me a few miles into the forest where I could park, build a fire, and breathe. Last April, I needed that escape more than ever. Work had been a grind, my inbox a battlefield. I craved a weekend alone, no voices, no screens, just the stars and me. But the forest has its own plans, doesn't it? I drove out on a Friday morning, the dirt road jarring the RV's frame. A mile in, I reached my favorite clearing, a pocket of earth cradled by towering trees. The air was crisp, scented with pine and damp soil, a balm for my frayed nerves. I unhitched the RV, set up a folding chair, and stacked logs for a fire pit, each piece a step toward peace. As dusk fell, the sky burned orange, then purple, the forest sinking into shadow. I lit the fire, its warmth wrapping around me like an old friend. I sipped a beer, the flames dancing, their glow a shield against the dark. This is mine, I thought. This is home. Night came fast, heavy as a curtain. The fire crackled, sparks, drifting like lost stars. I was halfway through my beer when I heard it. A rustle, not the skitter of a raccoon or the stumble of a deer. It was deliberate, a slow, measured step through the underbrush. My skin tightened. I set the bottle down, my eyes piercing the darkness beyond the firelight. The trees stood still, their shadows swaying in the flickering glow. "Listen," my mind commanded. "Don't dismiss this." I held my breath, waiting. Another step, then silence. Just the wind, I told myself, though the air was dead calm. For 20 minutes it persisted, soft, circling steps, just out of reach. Each one twisted the knot in my chest tighter. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam weak against the forest's depth. I swept it across the tree line. Nothing. Just branches, leaves, an endless void. "You're alone," I whispered. "It's nothing." But the words rang false. I doused the fire, the logs hissing in protest, and retreated to the RV, locking the door with a thud that felt too loud. I checked the windows, curtains drawn tight, and slid into bed, my ears straining. Every creak of the RV, every sigh of the wind felt like a threat. Sleep came, thin and restless. Dawn broke, painting the forest in gold. Birds sang, their chatter a stark contrast to the night's dread. I brewed coffee, the ritual grounding me, but those steps lingered in my mind. I pulled on my boots and hiked out to where I'd heard the noise, searching for footprints, a snapped twig, anything. The ground was soft, yielding, but there were no tracks, no proof. Was it real? Doubt gnawed at me, but I wasn't naive. Back at the RV, I strapped my handgun to my waist, its cold weight a reminder to stay sharp. I wasn't a paranoid man, but I wasn't a fool either. That evening, I rebuilt the fire, keeping it low, its light a cautious whisper. I sat outside, the gun heavy on my hip, the forest unnervingly quiet. "Stay vigilant," I urged myself. "Don't let it lull you." An hour passed, the flames casting shadows that twisted like specters. I was about to head inside when I saw it. A figure, tall and still, standing just beyond the fire's reach, maybe 25 feet away. Their face was lost in shadow, but I felt their gaze, heavy and unyielding. My heart thundered. "Who are you?" I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. For a moment we were statues bound by an invisible thread. Then they turned, slipping into the trees, their steps silent as a ghost's. I lunged for the fire, smothering it with dirt, and grabbed, my chair nearly tripping in my haste. Inside the RV, I locked the door, my hands trembling. They saw me. They know I'm here. I sat in the dark, the gun in my lap, every nerve alight. I checked the windows, the locks, my eyes scanning the RV's cramped interior. "You're safe," I repeated. "They're gone," but the lie crumbled. Hours dragged, each second a test of my sanity. I thought of my childhood in these woods, how I'd once felt invincible here. Now the forest was a stranger, its embrace cold and cruel. Around 3 in the morning it came again, footsteps, rapid and purposeful, crunching toward the RV. My breath stopped. They slowed, stopping inches from the door. I gripped the gun, my pulse a deafening roar. "Don't move. Don't breathe." Silence stretched, thick and suffocating, as if they were listening, waiting. I pictured their hand on the handle, their shadow looming. Then, a single step, followed by a sprint fading into the night. I stayed frozen, my body screaming to act. But fear held me fast. Dawn's first light was my signal. I packed the RV, my hands clumsy, and hitched it to the truck. As I worked, I noticed something. A small carved stone, no bigger than my palm, left beside the fire pit. It was smooth, etched with a crude spiral. Unnatural in this wild place. Did they leave this? I pocketed it, my skin crawling, and drove out. The forest's gaze heavy on my back. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches a cage I'd barely escaped. Home felt hollow, the locks on my doors a flimsy defense. I haven't taken the RV out since. The woods, once my haven, are now a place of shadows I can't trust. That stone sits in a drawer, a reminder I can't ignore. What did they want? I'll never know. Sometimes in the quiet of night I hear footsteps outside, faint but real. I check the windows, see nothing, but feel it. That figure, waiting at the edge of the firelight, ready to claim what I escaped. 5 years ago, I wandered into the northern Appalachians, chasing solitude on a trail I thought I knew. But something in the dark was watching, waiting for me to stray. My name is Nathan, a seasoned hiker drawn to the wild's untamed embrace. I'd trekked the Appalachians countless times, their rugged peaks a familiar refuge. That summer, I set out on a new trail, a 3-day journey I'd meticulously planned, mapping each turn on my phone, my compass a trusted companion. Feel the thrill, Nathan. The mountains are yours. The first stretch was a well-trodden path, packed earth beneath my boots, the air sharp with pine. But as I ventured deeper, the trail faded, swallowed by undergrowth, the path narrowing until it was little more than a whisper through the trees. I pressed on, my confidence unshaken, until the forest's silence grew heavy, the trail vanishing entirely. My stomach twisted. I checked my compass, its needle steady but unhelpful. The map showed no forks, no alternate routes. I was lost. Dusk crept in, the sky a bruised purple, shadows pooling like ink between the trees. Find a clearing, Nathan, set up camp. I couldn't risk wandering further in the dark, so I chose a small hollow, the ground uneven but sheltered by a canopy of gnarled branches. I pitched my tent with haste, skipping the fire. I was too tired, too disoriented. I crawled into my sleeping bag, the fabric cold against my skin, and let exhaustion pull me under. Sleep, Nathan. The forest will keep you. But a few hours later, I jolted awake, my bladder urging me out into the night. The air was frigid, the forest cloaked in a darkness so thick it felt alive. I unzipped the tent, the sound unnaturally loud, and stepped into the trees, my flashlight casting a weak beam. That's when I saw it. A faint, flickering glow in the distance, unmistakable. A campfire. My heart stuttered. Who else could be out here at 2 a.m. on a trail that doesn't exist? I stood frozen, the glow dancing through the trees, its warmth a cruel mockery in the icy night. Think, Nathan, it's just another camper. But the thought felt hollow. The odds were too slim, the hour too late. No hiker keeps a fire burning at this time, not in a place so remote. I couldn't sleep knowing someone, or something, was out there watching. Stay alert, Nathan, don't let them catch you off guard. I decided to act to show I was awake, aware. I gathered damp twigs, their bark slick with dew, and built a fire of my own, the flames sputtering to life. It roared, a beacon in the dark, its light stretching toward the distant glow. But then, as if in response, the other fire vanished, snuffed out in an instant. My blood ran cold. This was no coincidence. Someone was there and they didn't want me to see them. I sat by my fire, its heat doing little to thaw the dread seeping into my bones. Don't look away, Nathan, there. Still out there? I scanned the darkness, my flashlight trembling in my hand. But the forest gave nothing away. Just an endless void of trees and shadows. The night stretched on, each second an eternity, my mind racing with possibilities. I remembered a story my father used to tell, a tale from his own hiking days in these mountains. He'd spoken of a trapper, a man who'd gone mad in the wilderness, luring hikers off the trails with false lights, stealing their gear, and sometimes more. Just a story, Nathan, nothing more. But the memory anchored a fear I couldn't shake. The glow of that fire burned into my mind like a warning. Dawn broke, gray and heavy, the forest draped in a mist that clung to the ground. I packed my tent, my movements hurried, but curiosity gnawed at me. Find the source, Nathan, know what you're running from. I strapped my handgun to my chest, its weight a cold comfort, and trekked toward the spot where the fire had been. The ground was uneven, roots snaking across my path, but I found it. A small clearing, the earth scorched, the ashes still warm. My breath caught. Shoe prints littered the dirt, too many to count, a chaotic dance of footsteps leading to a structure, just beyond the trees. It was a cabin, or what was left of one. Its wood weathered and rotting, the door hanging open like a gaping mouth. I approached, each step heavier than the last, the air thick with the scent of decay. Look inside, Nathan, but be ready. The interior was a tomb of musty air, the walls sagging under the weight of time. But what I saw inside stopped me cold. A pile of camping gear, stacked haphazardly in the corner. Tents, hiking sticks, backpacks, some new, their tags still attached. Others worn and faded as if they'd been there for years. This isn't one person's haul. The gear was expensive, the kind no hiker would abandon, and it told a story of its own. A story of theft, of lures, of people who'd never made it out. My father's tale flashed through my mind again, the mad trapper's ghost lingering in every shadow. Get out, Nathan. Now. I turned, my heart pounding, and ran, the cabin's stench clinging to me like a curse. The forest blurred past, branches clawing at my arms, but by some miracle I stumbled across a boulder I'd passed on my way in, its shape a lifeline in my memory. Follow it, Nathan. It'll lead you home. I traced my steps, the trail slowly, reappearing, until I reached the main path, my lungs burning as I fled back to civilization. I called the police as soon as I had signal, my voice shaking as I recounted what I'd found. But they dismissed it, said they'd look into it, but nothing came of it. They didn't believe you, Nathan. But you know the truth. I've never gone back to those mountains, but the memory of that night haunts me still. The fire that watched me, the cabin that held its secrets, they're still out there. I think someone or something is out there, luring hikers off the trails, stealing their gear, maybe their lives. I don't know how they do it or how. Many have fallen victim, but I know I came too close to joining them. If I'd stayed, I wouldn't be here. The Appalachians hold their secrets tight, and somewhere in those woods a fire still burns, waiting for the next wanderer to lose their way. I thought the forest was my playground, until it showed me its monsters. At 7 years old, the woods were a wonderland, a place where every tree hid a secret and every path promised adventure. But one summer, during a family camping trip in Washington, that wonderland became a nightmare that still clings to me 18 years later. My name's Noah, and this is the story of how my cousin Mateo and I wandered too far and found a darkness we barely escaped. Feel the innocence of childhood, the joy of running free, and then the dread when the world you trust turns against you. In Arizona, where I grew up, the world was flat and dry, a sea of dust and cactus. Our annual camping trips to Washington were my escape, a chance to trade sand for emerald forests, to breathe air sharp with pine and earth. Picture it, towering trees stretching toward the sky, their branches woven into a canopy that danced with sunlight, the ground soft with moss and needles. Best of all were my cousins, especially Mateo, a year older and my partner in every scheme. We'd spend hours plotting games, our voices bouncing through the woods, our bond stronger than the miles that kept us apart most of the year. Feel that connection, the kind only kids share, where a cousin feels like a brother, and the world is yours to conquer. That summer, 2 days into the trip, our campsite buzzed with life. See the scene: the lake sparkling under the sun, kids splashing, aunts and uncles laughing by the fire, the smell of smoke and grilled food drifting through the air. Mateo wasn't one for swimming, so we slipped away to the forest, our kingdom. We played bandit, a game we'd invented, one of us the cop, chasing the other, the bandit, through the trees. Feel the rush, your heart pounding, the forest a blur of green and brown as you dodge roots and leap over logs. We laughed, our shouts echoing, trying to stay close to camp. But when Mateo chased me, waving a stick like a knight's sword, I ran faster, my sneakers thudding against the earth, my breath hot in my chest. The forest seemed to grow, its paths twisting, the lake's sounds fading behind me. I don't know how long I ran, but I stopped in a clearing where the trees parted, my lungs burning. There, half buried in vines and shadows, stood a trailer, rusted, weathered, its windows dark like hollow eyes staring back. Feel the air change, the playful magic of the woods turning heavy, oppressive. Mateo caught up, his stick forgotten, his eyes wide as he stared at the trailer. It looked abandoned, a forgotten relic, its metal sides pitted with age. We whispered about sneaking inside, imagining treasures or ghosts, our 7- and 8-year-old minds alive with stories. But something, the trailer's silence, the way the vines seemed to clutch it, made us hesitate. We turned away, our footsteps uncertain, the forest no longer our friend. 10 minutes later, lost and wandering, a strange sound broke the quiet, a low metallic clatter, a noise that didn't belong. Through the trees came a couple, pushing a shopping cart piled high with junk, rusted pipes, twisted metal, scraps that gleamed dully in the sunlight. Picture them, the woman Clara with tangled hair and a faded dress, her smile too wide. The man, Victor, lean and silent, his hands tight on the cart. Clara approached, her voice soft, almost musical, asking if we were lost, who we were with, our names, our ages. Feel the pull of her words, the way they wrap around you, promising safety. When we said 7 and 8, she glanced at Victor, a shadow crossing her face before her smile returned. She said we didn't need to be scared, that they'd take us to their camp, drop off their things and find our parents. Maybe we'll make s'mores, she added, her eyes bright. In my child's mind, daytime was safe. Bad things hid in the dark. So we followed. Mateo's step slow, his glance meeting mine unsure. Clara talked as we walked, her voice a steady hum, asking Mateo about our game, our camp. I watched the cart, its contents shifting, the metal scraping against itself. It looked like garbage, but why drag it through the forest? Victor stayed behind, his silence louder than words. Every time I looked, his eyes were on me. Cold, unblinking like a wolf tracking its prey. Feel the fear creep in, a knot in your stomach, the forest tightening around you. I thought of my mom's warnings. Strangers are dangerous, but Clara's kindness clouded my judgment. Mateo's hand brushed mine, his fingers tense. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the sky. We were too far from home. The trailer appeared again, its rusted bulk more sinister now, like a trap waiting to spring. Clara took our hands, her grip firm, her smile stretched thin. "Ready for s'mores?" she asked, but her voice was sharp, urgent. The world shifted. A voice pierced the air. Mateo's name, then mine. Feel your heart leap, hope crashing against fear. It was Elena, my sister, calling from the distance. Clara's hand tightened, her nails biting into my skin. She whispered to Victor, her words quick, panicked. He answered, low and gruff, his eyes darting toward the sound. Time froze. Clara pulled us toward the trailer, her steps fast, almost dragging us. The trailer's door loomed, a black void. I looked back, glimpsing Elena through the trees, her figure a lifeline. "Elena!" I screamed, my voice tearing through the quiet. Clara's grip slipped, and Mateo broke free. We ran, our legs pumping, the forest a blur of green, our breaths ragged. Elena reached us, her face pale but fierce, her arms pulling us close. She shouted to the camp, and soon our parents were there, their voices a mix of relief and worry. Picture the scene. Clara and Victor standing back, Clara's smile forced, Victor's face unreadable. They told our parents they'd been searching for our family, calling us sweet boys. My parents thanked them, even invited them for burgers. But they declined, slipping into the woods like shadows. Feel the weight of what didn't happen, the danger we couldn't name. Later, Mateo and I told Elena the couple was wrong, but she didn't understand. Our dad mentioned Victor's eerie stare, but no one saw the truth. We were safe, so it didn't matter. Or so they thought. That night, lying in my sleeping bag, the forest's sounds felt different. Less like a lullaby, more like a warning. The trailer haunted me, its dark windows burned into my mind, Victor's eyes following me into my dreams. Years later, Mateo and I revisited that day, now old enough to see the horror we'd escaped. The couple's cart, their urgency, Clara's grip, they weren't helping us. They were desperate, maybe planning to sell us to survive. Feel the sickness of that truth, the way it rewrites your childhood. I kept it from my parents for years, ashamed, feeling like prey. Mateo felt he'd failed me, his guilt mirroring mine. We told our family eventually, but too late for justice. The forest stays with me, its beauty forever tainted. A reminder that monsters don't always hide in the dark. They can smile, offer s'mores, and walk among you. I keep my kids' eye closed now, teaching them to listen to that quiet voice that says run, because some shadows in the trees are real. The night was silent, but my heart screamed. I woke in my tent, the darkness a weight on my chest, the air thick with something wrong. Beside me, in the next tent, my friend Caleb stirred, but not to sleep. A faint rustle, a zip, then the glint of steel in his hand. My blood froze. This wasn't the guy I knew, the one I'd laughed with hours ago. His shadow moved, deliberate, toward my tent, and I realized I wasn't safe. Not here, not with him. The forest held its breath, waiting for what he'd do next. Spring break was our rebellion against the grind. College had drained us. Lectures, exams, the endless churn of deadlines. Caleb, my friend of barely a year, pitched the idea. A camping trip, just us, on a trail we'd hiked before. 6 miles of pines and cedars, quiet and ours. I jumped at in a fire, beers, a night to forget the world. We planned it all, tents, snacks, a cooler of drinks. This is freedom, I thought, driving out at dawn. This is us. The trailhead was empty, the forest a cathedral of green. Our boots hit the path, the air sharp with sap and earth, our laughter echoing. 6 miles in, we found a clearing, the sky a canvas of gold and pink. We pitched our tents, their nylon walls a fragile home. Caleb stacked stones, I gathered wood, and soon a fire roared, its warmth a shield against the dusk. Nothing can touch us here, I told myself. We're untouchable. Night fell, the stars cold and distant. We sat by the fire, beers in hand, the flames painting our faces in flickering light. Caleb was all grins, tossing out jokes about professors and bad dates. We talked for hours, the forest a quiet witness. But as the fire died, a heaviness settled in my gut. Is it the woods? The trees seemed to close in, their shadows sharper, watching. I blamed the alcohol, shook it off, and we smothered the fire, crawling into our tents. Sleep, I urged myself. You're fine. Sleep came, but it shattered easily. I'd jolt awake, heart pounding, the tent's walls too close. Just the forest, I reasoned. You're new to this. But the unease grew, a splinter in my mind. I remembered my sister years ago warning me about friends who change in the dark. Some people hide who they are, she'd said, her eyes distant, scarred by her own betrayal. I pushed the thought away, but it clung, heavy and cold. Deep in the night, a sound yanked me awake, fabric shifting, the slow zip of Caleb's tent. He's just up for a leak, I told myself, but the noise stopped, replaced by a soft rustle. Caleb's backpack, its contents moving. What's he doing? My breath caught, the darkness a living thing around me. The rustling was careful, secretive, not the fumbling of a sleepy friend. Listen now, my mind commanded, don't ignore this. I sat up, my pulse loud in my ears, and unzipped my tent, the sound cutting the silence. Footsteps, quick, retreating, scurried away from my tent. I leaned out, flashlight shaking in my hand. Caleb crouched by his backpack, moonlight catching, his face tense caught. He shoved something inside fast, then turned to me, his eyes wide, not with surprise but guilt. Is everything okay? I asked, my voice brittle. He stared a moment too long, then nodded, his face a mask I didn't know. This isn't right, I realized. This isn't him. I stepped out, my legs unsteady, and glanced at his backpack. There, poking out, was the grip of a handgun, its steel glinting like a warning. My world tilted. A gun? Caleb had never said a word about it. We'd planned every detail. Tents, food, drinks. Not this. My stomach churned, the forest silence deafening. I looked at him, fighting to hide my fear, but his eyes, cold, guarded, told me he knew I'd seen it. Run, my mind screamed. Get out now. We stood, frozen, the air thick with unspoken truths. Then without a word, he slipped into his tent, the zipper sealing him away like a secret. I didn't sleep. I sat outside, the gun's image a scar in my mind, my flashlight sweeping the trees. What was he planning? I replayed our day. His laugh, his ease, the way he'd pushed for this trip. Had I missed a sign? I thought of my sister's story, her friend who'd turned on her during a road trip, greed twisting trust into a knife. You never know what's inside someone, she'd warned. The forest seemed to agree, its darkness a mirror to my doubt. Caleb's tent was still, but I felt him, awake, waiting. Morning came, gray and heavy. I packed my tent, my hands trembling, every shadow a threat. As I worked, I noticed a mark on a nearby tree. A crude spiral carved fresh, its edges raw. Did he do this? It wasn't there yesterday. I left it, my skin crawling, and turned to Caleb. He emerged, his face blank, avoiding my gaze. "Let's go," I said, my voice sharp. He nodded and we hiked back, the trail a gauntlet of silence. I kept him in sight, my heart a drumbeat. At the car, I threw my gear in and drove, the rearview mirror empty but heavy with his presence. Caleb never reached out after that. Our friendship, once a lifeline, crumbled into a question I can't answer. I haven't camped since, haven't trusted the woods, or anyone the same. That gun, its glint, and that spiral on the tree haunt me. What was he going to do? Sometimes, the dead of night, I wake, certain I hear a zipper, a rustle, and I see him. Not my friend, but the stranger in the tent beside me, waiting for the dark to claim me. In the heart of the Appalachians, I sought a lake's serenity. But the forest had other plans. Something was listening, and it wasn't the wind. My name is Lucas, a 29-year-old wanderer from lower West Virginia, where the Appalachian Range stretches like an ancient spine across the earth. I've spent years backpacking its trails, the mountains a second home where I'd chase solitude with my best friend Ryan. We'd plan a big trek every fall, a ritual of sweat and silence, but 2019, Ryan had to cancel last minute, an emergency at work. I'd already taken the week off, my gear packed, my mind set on a small lake nestled high in the peaks. Go alone, Lucas. The mountains will keep you company. I drove to the trailhead on a crisp Monday morning, the air sharp with the scent of pine, and began my ascent, navigating with a map, a compass, and the promise of landmarks. A jagged rock here, a twisted tree there, guiding me to the lake. The first 2 days were a grueling climb, my boots carving a path through unmarked terrain. The forest a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. On the second evening, still hours from the ridge, the sky darkened to a deep charcoal, the air heavy with the threat of rain. Set up camp, Lucas. Rest now. I found a clearing near a sagging ridge, the ground uneven but sheltered by a cluster of oaks, their leaves rustling like secrets in the breeze. I pitched my tent, the canvas taut against the wind, and built a small fire, its flames dancing as I heated a can of stew, the savory aroma mingling with the earth's damp musk. By 8 o'clock, the sun long gone, I crawled into my tent, a book in hand, the fire's glow casting faint shadows on the fabric walls. Relax, Lucas. Let the fire burn. But 20 minutes into reading, a sharp snap echoed from behind the tent, the sound of a stick breaking under weight. My body froze, breath caught in my throat. A black bear, I thought, drawn by the scent of my meal. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam shaky, and crawled outside, the night air biting at my skin. I swept the light across the tree line. Nothing. I called out, my voice harsh, hoping to scare off any predator. But the forest swallowed my words, offering only silence in return. That snap was too deliberate, Lucas. Something was there. I lingered outside, my senses on edge, the darkness pressing, and like a living thing. Stay vigilant, Lucas, don't let it catch you off guard. The snap had been distinct, not the rustle of wind or the scamper of a small animal. It was the weight of something stepping, deliberate and close. I put out the fire, the embers fading with a reluctant hiss, and retreated to my tent, my heart pounding against the quiet. Sleep was a battle, my ears straining for every sound, the forest's stillness a cruel tease. When morning came, I was surprised I'd slept at all. The gray light filtering through the trees, a small mercy. I packed up, my movements hurried, and pushed on toward the ridge, reaching it by midday. From there, the lake was a straight shot, and I moved quickly, determined to arrive before dark. Get to the lake, Lucas. Reclaim the peace. I reached its shores with an hour to spare before sunset, the water a mirror of sapphire, framed by jagged peaks, its beauty a balm to my frayed nerves. I walked its perimeter, the soft lapping of waves a gentle rhythm, and set up camp on the tree line, the scent of pine mingling with the lake's crisp freshness. As night fell, I sat by a new fire, its warmth a fragile shield against the chill. Breathe, Lucas, you're safe now. But the forest had other plans. A faint rustle came from the trees behind me, soft at first, then rhythmic like footsteps on dry leaves. My spine stiffened, head whipping around. I told myself it was paranoia, that no one could be out here. I'd seen no tents, no signs of life around the lake. But the sounds persisted, too deliberate to dismiss, echoing through the darkness beyond the fire's reach. Someone's watching, Lucas. They're close. An hour later, I retreated to my tent, the night too thick to see beyond a few feet, the footsteps fading but never fully gone. I lay down, my flashlight clutched tight, the sounds returning every few minutes. Soft, cautious, as if testing my awareness. Exhaustion finally pulled me under, but an hour later I woke to a new sound. Someone running, their steps heavy as they fled from my tent. My heart slammed against my ribs. I bolted upright, flashlight in hand, and stumbled outside, the beam catching the fleeting shape of a figure vanishing into the trees. I looked down, my blood running cold. Footprints circled my tent, fresh and deep, as if someone had been pacing, searching, waiting. They were here, Lucas, while you slept. I scrambled to relight the fire, my hands trembling, the flames casting jagged shadows across the prints. Stay awake, Lucas, don't let them come back. I was alone, miles from help, the lake's beauty now a cruel facade hiding something sinister. I sat by the fire all night, my head on a swivel, the forest a void of unseen eyes, but nothing else stirred. At dawn, I snapped a few pictures of the lake, its surface serene but mocking, and packed up, my nerves too raw to stay another day. Leave, Lucas, before they return. The hike back was a blur, my steps fueled by fear, the forest's silence now a threat. Along the way, I noticed things missing from my backpack. Food, a knife, a small tool. Items I'd kept close, even in sleep. They took them, Lucas, while you were vulnerable. The thought sent a shiver through me, a violation that lingered long after I reached safety. Even now, years later, I can't shake the feeling of those unseen eyes, the lake that listened, and the chilling certainty that someone, or something, had been inside my tent. Their presence a shadow I'll never outrun. I went to find peace in the woods, only to meet terror in the rain. At 20, I thought solitude was freedom, a chance to test my nerve in the wild. But one stormy night near my family's cabin in Oregon, I learned that being alone can summon dangers that haunt you long after you flee. My name's Evan, and this is the story of how a place woven into my heart became a labyrinth of fear. Feel the pull of the forest, the promise of quiet, and then the dread as the darkness closes in. Our family owned cabins in Oregon, nestled in a forest where pines stretched like sentinels, their branches heavy with the scent of sap and earth. Picture it, trails winding through mossy rocks, sunlight filtering through needles, the faint roar of a distant stream. Those cabins were my childhood. Summers of cousins racing through the woods. My mom's laughter by the fire, my dad teaching me to whittle. Feel those memories warm and safe, the kind that make a place feel eternal. But this trip was different. I'd just turned 20, itching to prove I could handle the wild alone. Camping near the cabins felt perfect, a taste of independence, with a safety net. I drove an hour from home, then hiked 30 minutes down a familiar trail, my backpack digging into my shoulders, the forest alive with the rustle of leaves and the call of unseen birds. The cabin emerged through the trees, its wooden walls weathered but comforting, a beacon of home. But as I drew closer, my breath caught. A window was missing, not broken, gone, as if surgically removed, no shards on the ground. The forest seemed to watch, its air heavier, its sounds muted. I hadn't meant to enter the cabin, but I carried the key for emergencies, and this screamed wrong. Feel the shift, the way a place you love turns alien. The door opened without the key, swinging inward with eerie silence, revealing a musty darkness. Muddy footprints snaked across the floor, chaotic and fresh, smearing the boards like a desecration. Furniture was tilted, drawers ajar, valuables. A radio, a family heirloom clock stolen. Someone had invaded this place, tearing through memories of campfire nights and board games. I saw my sister's face giggling as we played cards inside, now overshadowed by this violation. The lock was useless, the mechanism jammed. With no phone signal, I decided to report it later and hiked 30 minutes downhill, the forest's beauty now laced with a quiet menace, its trees whispering secrets I couldn't grasp. Rain fell, cold and relentless, as I reached a clearing. Picture the scene. Water cascading through branches, pooling in the earth, my boots sinking into mud. New to solo camping, I fumbled with the tent, my fingers numb, the fabric slipping in my grip. It took hours, and I was drenched by the end, my clothes clinging like a second skin. I sat on a log under a dripping tree, eating cold rations, the rain a constant roar. Then a voice broke through, low, fragmented, drifting from the trees. Feel your heart lurch, the shock of another soul in your isolation. A man appeared, trudging uphill toward the cabin, his figure blurred by the storm. Picture him. Silas, thin and soaked, hair matted to his skull, muttering to himself in a jumbled stream of words. Nonsense, like a mind unraveling. He didn't notice me, his eyes fixed on some unseen point, his steps uneven. He vanished into the forest, but his voice lingered, a chill that seeped deeper than the rain. The woods were no longer mine, their embrace now a threat. An hour later, I trekked back to the cabin, driven by a mix of fear and need to know. Was he living there, defiling it further? From afar, it stood empty, the missing window a black wound. In the dusk, I returned to my camp, the rain unyielding, my fire kit barely sparking in the wet. Night cloaked the forest, and I coaxed a small fire to life, its glow a frail barrier against the dark. Feel the fleeting comfort, the flames dancing, the scent of smoke and wet pine. I heated food, trying to shake Silas's image, when footsteps approached from the hill. The air tightened. I peered into the blackness beyond the fire, rain veiling my sight. A figure stepped into the light. Silas, or his twin, his face gaunt, eyes boring into me. "What do you want?" I yelled, my voice raw, meant to drive him. He froze, rain streaming down his cheeks, his stare vacant yet piercing, a predator's gaze. Feel the terror, the seconds crawling, your pulse a drumbeat. I shouted again, but he stood rooted 10 feet away, the storm framing his silence. Then a sound. A single step behind me, deliberate, too close. The forest turned traitor, hiding more than one shadow. Panic surged, my body moving before my mind. Caught up, I sprinted down the hill, boots slipping in mud, branches snagging my jacket. Feel the chaos, rain blinding, heart hammering, the dark swallowing any sign of pursuit. I didn't dare look back, my legs burning, the forest a maze of unseen threats. The cabin flashed in my mind, its broken door a warning I'd ignored, its walls no longer home. Guided by my phone's fading light, I stumbled to the trail, each step a plea for safety. I reached my car, hands trembling as I locked myself in, the rain pounding the roof like fists. I drove until I had signal, calling 911, my voice shaking as I recounted the night. Feel the fragile relief, tainted by what lingered behind. The police investigated days later. My campsite was erased, only scraps of gear left, but the cabin revealed a darker truth. 3 distinct shoe prints scarred the floor, proof of multiple intruders. Feel the ice in your veins, knowing 3 strangers watched, waited. Their motives a mystery. The police labeled it a robbery, noting no chase. But I saw Silas's eyes, felt the weight of that second step. What did they plan? The forest, once my sanctuary, now guards a secret I'll never uncover. It whispers to me still, its beauty a veil for something sinister, a reminder that solitude can invite terror. I haven't gone back, and maybe I never will. Some doors, once opened, lead only to shadows. I reached the lake at dusk, its water a mirror of the dying sky. 5 hours of hiking, alone to find peace. But as I dropped my pack, a shadow moved. Too fast, too human, darting between the trees across the shore. My breath caught. No one should be here, not this far out. I scanned the forest, heart pounding, but it was gone. Then I felt it, eyes, heavy, unyielding, boring into me from the dark. The lake was silent, but the air screamed danger. Whoever, whatever was out there. They'd seen me first, and they weren't leaving. The city had drained me dry. My job, a soul-sucking cycle of emails, meetings, and fluorescent lights, left me a shell, my spirit frayed at the edges. I needed the wilderness to stitch myself back together, to feel alive again. Short camping trips, 2 or 3 days, were my refuge. Last April, I chose a lake, small and hidden, 5 hours hike from any road. No trails, no people, just solitude. I drove out at dawn, the sky a pale gray, and parked at a forgotten trailhead, the gravel crunching under my tires. I shouldered my pack, its straps biting into my skin, and stepped into the forest, the air sharp with pine and damp earth. Each step was a rebellion against the noise of my life, a promise of peace. This is mine, I thought. The trees parting, like a curtain. This is freedom. The hike was a grueling pilgrimage. The ground was uneven, roots snaking across my path like traps, rocks slick with moss threatening to twist my ankles. My boots sank into soft earth, the scent of decay and sap filling my lungs with every breath. The forest was a cathedral of green, its canopy a lattice of branches that filtered the sunlight into dappled pools. I walked for hours, my muscles burning, my mind slowly unspooling. But 4 hours in, something shattered my rhythm, a flicker of movement far ahead like a figure slipping through the trees. I froze, my pulse a hammer in my throat. Was that real? The forest fell still, its depths a blur of green and shadow. I squinted, searching for any sign, but saw only the endless stretch of trees. A deer, I told myself, or my tired eyes playing tricks. But my gut twisted, a primal warning I couldn't ignore. Keep going, I urged myself. You're almost there. The lake appeared like a mirage, its surface a perfect mirror, reflecting a sky bruised with purple and gold. I dropped my pack, my shoulders screaming in relief, and stood, drinking in the view. It was breathtaking, a jewel nestled in the wilderness, its edges fringed with reeds, the water so still it seemed to hold its breath. I exhaled, a smile tugging at my lips. This was why I came here, for this untouched beauty, this silence. But then that shadow moved again, and my blood ran cold. Across the shore, a figure stepped from the trees. No backpack, no gear, just a silhouette pacing the water's edge with a predator's grace. My skin prickled, a chill racing down my spine. They paused, their head tilting toward me, their gaze a tangible weight that pressed against my chest. Then they vanished into the forest, the trees closing behind them like a shroud. Who are they? I scanned the shore, searching for a tent, a fire, any sign of a campsite, but there was nothing. Just the lake, the trees, and the suffocating silence. The lake, so serene moments ago, now felt like a trap, its beauty a mask for something darker. Pitched my tent in the trees, a safe distance from the water, my hands trembling as I drove the stakes into the earth. I'd planned to relax, to read by the lake, maybe even fish if the mood struck. But that figure haunted me, their presence, a splinter in my mind. Why no gear? Why here? This lake was too remote, too hidden for a casual hiker. I built a small fire, its flames a fragile bubble of light against the encroaching night. The forest was unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that feels alive. Watching. I heated a meal, the smell of beans and spices sharp in the cool air. But my eyes kept darting to the trees, searching for movement. You're imagining it, I told myself, stirring the pot. They're gone. But the weight of being watched pressed harder, a pressure I couldn't shake, as if the forest itself had eyes. My dad's voice surfaced, rough and heavy with warning. The wild isn't your friend, he'd told me years ago, after we stumbled. On an abandoned camp deep in the mountains. The site had been a wreck. Tents torn, gear scattered like a storm had hit, a knife buried in a tree trunk, its blade rusted with something dark. Some folks come out here to disappear, he'd muttered, his face tight with unease. I was just a kid then, wide-eyed and fearless, thinking the woods were a playground. I'd laughed off his words, chalking them up to an old man's caution. But now, by this lake, those words were a blade in my mind, cutting through my denial. Had I been reckless coming here alone? The fire flickered, its warmth no match for the ice in my veins. I stared at the flames, their dance hypnotic, but my ears strained for any sound beyond their crackle. I'd heard whispers about this lake too, tales swapped in dimly lit bars near the trailhead. Locals called it cursed, a place where the forest swallowed people whole. Hikers vanished here, they said, leaving nothing but echoes, no gear, no trace, just gone. An old trapper, his eyes clouded with age, claimed he'd seen shapes by the water, not human, not animal, just wrong. They moved like shadows, he'd said, their eyes glowing like embers, watching, always watching. I'd scoffed at the time, dismissing it as campfire folklore meant to scare city folks like me. But now, with the forest so still, those stories felt alive, their weight pressing against me. What if they're true? The lake gleamed in the firelight, its surface a black mirror hiding depths I couldn't fathom. I pulled out a book, trying to distract myself, but the words blurred on the page, my hands trembling too hard to hold it steady. Listen, my mind commanded. Something's here. The night deepened, the stars above cold and unfeeling, like distant witnesses to my growing dread. I was about to smother the fire, to retreat to the fragile safety of my tent, when I saw it. A figure, 15 yards away, standing in the dark. No face, no features, just a shape. But their gaze pierced the shadows, locking onto me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. My heart thundered, my breath a ragged gasp in my throat. They're here. I gripped my knife, its handle slick with sweat, the fire's light a failing shield between us. We stood, frozen in a silent standoff, for what felt like an eternity, a minute, maybe more. Their presence was a weight, suffocating as if they could see through me, into me, peeling back every layer of my being. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, my body locked in primal fear. Then they backed away, still facing me, their form dissolving into the trees like a ghost, leaving only the echo of their stare. They're not gone, I realized, my hands shaking as I fed the fire. They're circling. I built the fire higher, its flames a desperate plea against the night. Sleep was a lost cause, an impossibility I couldn't even entertain. I sat, knife clutched in my hand, my eyes sweeping the dark, searching for any sign of them. Every rustle of leaves, every shift of the wind was their presence, their breath, their steps. What do they want? My mind raced, replaying that abandoned camp my dad had found. The knife in the tree, the way he'd gone quiet, his face pale with something like fear. "Some things you don't question," he'd said as we left, his voice barely above a whisper. "You just run." The lake was no longer a refuge. It was a stage, and I was the prey, caught in a performance I didn't understand. I swore. I saw ripples on the water, faint and unnatural, as if something moved beneath the surface, something alive, something watching. Is it them? My heart pounded harder, the fire's light reflecting off the lake, casting shadows that seemed to dance, to reach for me. I thought of the trapper's story again, his words no longer a tale but a prophecy. He'd said the shapes by the lake didn't leave footprints, didn't make a sound, but they always came back. "They take what they want," he'd rasped, his hands trembling as he clutched his drink. "And they don't stop watching." I'd laughed then, thinking him a drunk spinning yarns for attention. But now, with the night pressing in, I believed him. The lake felt alive, its surface a veil hiding something ancient, something hungry. I scanned the water, my flashlight beam trembling, and saw something. A small, pale object floating near the reeds, bobbing gently. A bone, I realized, etched with a crude spiral, its edges worn but deliberate. My stomach lurched. Did they leave? This I didn't dare approach, didn't dare touch the water. The bone floated, a silent message, a warning I couldn't decipher. Dawn crept in, gray and heavy, the first light a lifeline I clung to. I packed my tent, my hands trembling so badly I fumbled the stakes, my breath coming in short. Panicked. Bursts. The forest stirred. Birds chirping, leaves rustling, but it felt like a facade, a mask hiding the truth. I started the hike back, my pack a burden I barely felt, my legs moving on instinct. Halfway out, I heard them, steps far behind, pacing me through the trees. They're following. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but I pushed faster. The trail a blur of green and brown. I didn't look back, didn't dare give them the satisfaction. "Don't stop," I commanded myself, my voice a silent scream. "Don't let them catch you." The forest seemed to stretch, endless, the trees closing in like a cage, their branches reaching for me, their shadows alive with intent. Near the end of the trail I saw it, a spiral, carved deep into a tree, its edges fresh, glistening with sap, as if carved moments ago. Beside it, half buried in the dirt, was another bone, small and fragile, etched with the same spiral, surface stained with something dark, something old. Their mark? My blood ran cold, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. I stumbled forward, the trailhead in sight. My car, a beacon of safety I wasn't sure I deserved. I reached the car, my keys slipping in sweat-slick hands, and threw my pack inside, slamming the door with a force that echoed through the forest. I drove, the rearview mirror empty but alive with dread, the trees fading into the distance but never truly leaving. Me home was no sanctuary, The locks on my doors, the walls of my apartment felt like paper, flimsy against the memory of that night. I haven't camped since, haven't stepped foot in the woods, haven't trusted the silence. That lake, that figure, that bone. They cling to me, a shadow I can't outrun. What were they, I ask myself, the question a loop in my mind, an obsession I can't escape. At night I wake, heart racing, certain I hear steps outside my window, see a shadow by the glass. I check the locks, peer into the dark and see nothing, but I feel it. The spiral burns in my mind, a warning I survived, a curse I carry. I escaped the watcher by the water, but I'll never escape their gaze. Last year I ventured down a 4-mile trail, seeking solitude in the wild. But the forest had a secret, and it wasn't ready to let me go. My name is Daniel, a solitary camper who finds peace in the untamed corners of the world. I've spent years exploring the same trails, their paths as familiar as the rhythm of my own heartbeat. But sometimes, I crave the unknown, the thrill of a place untouched by routine. Last spring, I chose a new route, a 4-mile trail I'd never walked, hidden deep in a remote stretch of wilderness 2 hours from my home, in a quiet town where the air always smells of pine and rain. Step into the unknown, Daniel. Let the trail guide you. I drove out on a foggy morning, the sky a heavy gray, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a prelude to the unease that would soon grip me. I parked my car at the trailhead, a lonely marker swallowed by the forest's edge, and began my hike, my boots sinking into the muddy ground, the trail a slippery mess that made each step a cautious dance. The path was a disappointment from the start, its surface slick and treacherous, forcing me to weave through puddles and mire, my jeans splattered with mud. Still, I pressed on, the forest's silence a heavy cloak around me, broken only by the squelch of my steps and the occasional drip of water from the canopy above. 45 minutes into the hike, as the fog thickened and the trees seemed to close in, something caught my eye off the trail, a flash of faded color amidst the endless green, a stain on the forest's uniformity. My pulse quickened, curiosity taking hold. It was a tent, or what was left of it, its fabric tattered and torn, sagging under the weight of time like the skin of a forgotten corpse. From a distance it looked empty, a ghostly relic in the undergrowth, its presence so out of place it sent a shiver down my spine. I approached, my boots crunching on fallen leaves, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness, and saw no signs of deliberate damage, just the slow decay of years, the canvas weathered to a brittle husk, its once vibrant blue faded to a sickly gray. How is it still standing, Daniel, after all this time? I circled it, my breath shallow, peering inside through a gaping tear, expecting to find remnants of a forgotten camp. Cooking gear, a sleeping bag, anything to tell me who had been here. But there was nothing, just the hollow shell of the tent, its emptiness more unsettling than any clutter could have been, as if the forest itself had swallowed the life it once held. I stood there, the damp air clinging to my skin, my mind racing, for explanations, but none made sense. Who would abandon a tent like this, leaving no trace of their existence behind? The forest seemed to watch me, its silence a judgment, and I felt the weight of unseen eyes, a sensation I couldn't shake as I turned back to the trail. The image of that tent burned into my thoughts like a scar. As I continued, the trail revealed more secrets, each one a dagger of dread in my chest. Dozens of objects scattered along the path, glinting in the dim light that filtered through the canopy. A rusted camp stove, its surface pitted with age, A torn backpack with its straps frayed and useless. A broken hiking stick snapped in two. They littered the ground like the bones of a forgotten traveler. My stomach churned, a cold dread settling. This wasn't carelessness. It was deliberate, as if one person had shed their entire existence along this trail, piece by piece, mile by mile. The sheer volume of gear, spread across the 4 miles, spoke of something darker, something intentional, a story written in the language of abandonment. I quickened my pace, my boots slipping in the mud, the trail stretching endlessly before me. Each new find, a dented canteen, a shredded rainfly, adding to the growing sense that I was walking through someone's nightmare, a prelude to my own. What happened here, Daniel, and why does it feel so wrong? My mind drifted to a tale my grandmother used to tell, a story whispered by the fireplace on cold nights when the wind howled outside. She spoke of a wanderer in these woods, a man who'd lost his mind to the forest's whispers, shedding his belongings as he descended into madness, haunting the trails to drive others away. Or worse. Just a story, Daniel, nothing more. But the memory anchored a fear I couldn't shake. The scattered gear a grim echo of her words. I reached the trail's end as dusk fell, the sky a bruised purple, the air growing colder with the fading light. Set up camp, Daniel, but stay alert. I chose a spot far from the trail, a small clearing surrounded by dense trees, their branches forming a protective canopy that felt more like a cage the longer I stayed. I pitched my tent, the air biting at my fingers, and settled in, my nerves frayed but exhaustion pulling me toward sleep. Close your eyes, Daniel. The night will pass. I drifted off, the forest's silence a deceptive lullaby, its stillness wrapping around me like a shroud. Slept through the night, or so I thought, the darkness hiding whatever moved beyond my tent's thin walls. At dawn, around 4 in the morning, the world still cloaked in a gray half-light, I unzipped my tent and stepped out, the air sharp, against my skin, carrying the scent of wet pine and something sour, something wrong. My breath caught, a chill running down my spine. The forest held its breath, the stillness unnatural, as if the trees themselves were watching, waiting. I turned, and there he was, a man standing just feet from my tent, his presence a violation of the solitude I'd sought, a tear in the fabric of the morning's quiet. He was tall and gaunt, his frame skeletal beneath clothes that were filthy, caked with mud and decay, as if he'd been birthed from the earth itself. His face was smeared with grime, his hair matted with leaves, and his eyes, hollow, unblinking, staring at me with an emptiness that felt inhuman, a void where a soul should have been. My body froze, fear rooting me to the spot. "Leave," he said, his voice soft but laced with a chilling menace, the word hanging in the air like a curse, its echo reverberating through the trees. I nodded, my hands trembling as I reached for my backpack, my fingers fumbling with the straps, but he lunged forward, his movements sudden and feral, a predator closing in on its prey. My heart pounded, panic surging through me. I stumbled back, falling to the ground, the damp earth cold against my palms, my voice reduced to a desperate chant. "Okay, okay, okay." As he loomed over me, his gaze unyielding, devoid of humanity, his shadow stretching long and jagged across the clearing. "Leave," he repeated, the command sharper now, a blade in the silence cutting through the fog that clung to the ground. I scrambled to my feet, abandoning my gear, my backpack a useless weight I couldn't bear to carry, and ran, the forest, blurring past me as I fled, branches whipping at my arms, leaving thin scratches that stung with every step. "Don't look back, Daniel. Just go." But I did one fleeting glance over my shoulder and saw him crouched over my backpack, rummaging through it with a strange animalistic curiosity, his hands moving like a predator inspecting its kill, tearing through my belongings with no purpose, no greed, just chaos. I kept running, my lungs burning, my legs trembling, the trail a labyrinth of shadows and mud, until I couldn't run anymore. I slowed to a fast walk, my body aching, my mind racing, until I reached my car, the sight of it a lifeline in the wilderness. Thank the stars, Daniel, you kept your keys. My phone and keys were in my pocket, a small mercy that saved me from being stranded, trapped in that forest with him. I drove until I found signal, my hands shaking as I dialed 911, my voice barely steady as I recounted the nightmare to the operator, the words spilling out in a rush, my heart still pounding as if I were still running. The police revealed a chilling detail. Another camper had reported a similar encounter on that trail, a man in tattered clothes, a demand to leave and gear scattered like leaves in the wind. But they'd kept it out of the public eye at the victim's request. It was likely the same person whose tent and belongings I'd found, a ghost of a warning I'd walked right past, my curiosity blinding me to the danger. A week later, a small search party scoured the trail, their boots trudging through the same mud I'd fled. But they found no trace of the man, no footprints, no signs of life, only my gear, scattered through the forest like debris, tossed aside with no purpose, a chaotic trail of my own existence mirroring the one I'd found. He didn't want it, Daniel, so why take it? The case went cold, just like the one before it, leaving me with more questions than answers, a void as empty as his stare. I can't stop thinking about that man, his hollow eyes, his strange compulsion to scatter rather than keep, as if the act itself was his purpose, a ritual of the forest's madness. My grandmother's story haunts me now, her wanderer more real than I'd ever imagined, a specter of the woods who drives the living away, or claims them. Even now, the trail haunts me, its secrets buried in the earth, whispering in my dreams. And I wonder how many others have crossed his path, how many never made it out, their stories scattered like my gear, lost to the forest's endless hunger. We thought the woods behind my house were safe, until the darkness proved us wrong. In high school, the forest was our sanctuary, a place where childhood games painted every tree with memories. But one impulsive night, when my friend Nate and I decided to camp there, we discovered that even the most familiar ground can harbor terrors that scar you for life. My name's Liam, and this is the story of how a teenage dare turned into a nightmare we barely escaped. Feel the rush of youth, the electric thrill of a reckless plan, and then the dread as the night turns against you. My house sat at the edge of a sprawling forest, a dense expanse of oaks and pines that stretched into the horizon, its trails a map of my childhood. Picture it, sunlight weaving through branches, the ground a carpet of leaves and moss, the air thick with the scent of earth and sap. As kids, Nate and I owned those woods, our laughter echoing as we played tag, built forts, and dared each other to venture deeper. Feel those memories, the boundless freedom, the faint thrill of danger that made every game an adventure. I remembered hide and seek, Nate's mischievous grin as he vanished behind a tree, our shouts fading into the forest's embrace. By high school, we'd left the woods behind, our days filled with screens and late-night talks. But one restless afternoon, sprawled on my couch, Nate's eyes sparked with a familiar mischief. "What if we go into the woods tonight?" he suggested, his voice alive with excitement. Feel the pull, the way a simple idea ignites your teenage spirit. A walk turned into a plan to camp, a test of our courage. Neither of us had camped before, but it was just behind my house. Safe, familiar. We grabbed snacks, water, a phone charger, and borrowed a tent from Nate's parents' garage, laughing as we planned our epic night. The forest called us back, its shadows whispering promises of adventure. Dusk painted the sky in shades of violet as we stepped into the woods, the trees looming taller, their branches knitting a ceiling above. The forest felt different, its paths, once so welcoming, now cloaked in an unfamiliar stillness, the air heavy with the weight of night. Nate's flashlight was a joke, its dim beam barely cutting through the dark, enough to avoid stumbling but useless against the growing shadows. Feel the unease, the way the woods you thought you knew turned strange under moonlight. For the first 15 minutes we were all bravado, joking about ghosts, our voices loud against the silence. But as we pushed deeper, our chatter faded, swallowed by the forest's quiet. The darkness pressed closer, the trees standing like silent sentinels, their shapes twisting in the faint light. I thought I heard movement, leaves shifting, twigs bending, but the flashlight revealed nothing, its glow a fragile shield. After 30 minutes, we found a grassy clearing encircled by trees, a natural stage for our camp. Setting up the tent was a nightmare. Nate swore it was easy, but the poles refused to cooperate, collapsing again and again. Picture us, two teens fumbling in the dark, the flashlight propped on a bush, its light flickering as we worked. Every odd sound made us pause, grabbing the flashlight to scan the trees, our nerves fraying with each false alarm. I regretted coming, the forest's magic replaced by a gnawing unease, its shadows holding secrets we couldn't see. The tent finally stood, shaky but upright, and we crawled inside, the nylon walls a flimsy barrier against the night. Feel the momentary calm, the relief of a task done, the hope of safety. The forest's rhythm was hypnotic, silence one moment, alive the next with distant bird calls, leaves stirring in the breeze. We sat cross-legged sharing snacks, our voices low, the woods sounds wrapping around us. It felt almost magical, a private world for just us. Then, a sound pierced the stillness. Steady, deliberate steps moving through the trees, their rhythm unmistakably human. Feel your heart lurch, the realization that you're not alone, that someone is out there. In the dark, the steps didn't approach but circled, as if passing by, their cadence heavy, purposeful. We froze, our eyes locked on the tent's walls, our breath shallow, the air inside thick with fear. The forest betrayed us, its familiarity a cruel illusion. The steps faded after a minute, leaving a silence that pressed against us, heavier than before. We waited, tense, until we were sure the stranger was gone. Feel the vulnerability, the tent no longer a haven but a trap. We moved outside, sitting on the grass, the flashlight gripped tight, needing to see the night around us. We whispered to steady ourselves, our voices fragile against the dark, but the woods felt alive, every shadow a potential threat. The night was watching, its quiet a predator's patience. Then the sound returned. The same steps, faint at first but growing closer, deliberate, unhurried. Feel the panic rise, the forest turning from friend to foe. They approached, closer, closer, until we feared they'd step into our clearing. Nate aimed the flashlight, its beam trembling, but the steps continued undeterred. Picture the scene. Two teens paralyzed, the light failing to reveal the source, the sound now mere steps away. Just as we braced for a figure to emerge, the steps halted. The silence was deafening, the air thick with presence. We heard breathing, slow, steady, just beyond the light's edge. Feel the terror, time stretching, your body locked, eyes straining into the black. Then a single step backward, followed by retreating footsteps. fading into the night. The forest exhaled, but the fear clung like a second skin, the breathing echoing in our minds. We tore down the tent, our hands shaking, abandoning gear in our haste. Feel the desperation, the primal need to flee. We ran, the flashlight bouncing, branches clawing at our skin, the forest a maze of shadows. The woods were no longer ours, their paths twisting, leading us astray. We stumbled onto a neighboring street, our hearts pounding, the night air cold against our sweat. Picture our escape. 2 teens, breathless, the forest fading behind, streetlights, a distant beacon. We walked back to my house, collapsing in my room, the door locked tight. We stayed up, voices trembling, replaying the night, the steps, the breathing, the what-ifs. What did they want? Someone had been there, watching, waiting. Their intent a shadow we couldn't grasp. I thought of our childhood games, how we'd felt invincible, now shattered by this unseen threat. The forest haunts me still, its magic tainted. A reminder that danger can lurk in the places you know best. We never returned, and I avoid isolated places now. The memory of that breathing a ghost that follows me. Whoever was out there, alone in the dark, carried a purpose we escaped by mere seconds, and that truth keeps me awake, even now. I parked my camper by the lake, the water shimmering under a fading March sky. A perfect spot, secluded, untouched. But as I stepped out, a rusted trailer loomed between the trees, its presence a scar in the forest. My stomach dropped. It wasn't here last time. I approached, the air growing colder, and saw no signs of life, just shadows inside whispering secrets. Then a light flickered in the trees, sharp and unnatural, moving closer. My heart seized. Someone was here, watching me. And that trailer held their truth, a truth I wasn't meant to find. The woods near my house were my escape, a sanctuary I'd carved out over years of restless days. My camper, an old rig with peeling paint and a temperamental engine, was my ticket to freedom. I'd drive it out a few miles, park in the forest, and let the world fade away. In early March, I needed that more than ever. Work had been a nightmare. Endless. Deadlines, a boss who thrived on pressure, and a city that never slept. I craved the quiet of the woods, the stillness of the lake I'd found years ago. It was a massive body of water, its shores sprawling, but I always chose a secluded spot, far from the usual trails. I packed for 2 nights, loaded my camper, and drove out, the dirt road rattling my bones as I went. This is my haven, I thought, the trees closing in. Nothing can touch me here. I reached my spot, a hidden clearing near the lake, the water glinting under the late afternoon sun. I unhitched the camper, its frame groaning as I leveled it on the uneven ground. The air was crisp, scented with pine and the faint tang of the lake, a smell that always grounded me. I set up a chair, gathered wood for a fire, and sat, watching the sky bleed orange and red as dusk settled in. The lake stretched before me, its surface a mirror for the fading light, its edges fringed with reeds that swayed in the gentle breeze. I exhaled, the tension of the week slipping away, replaced by the quiet rhythm of the forest. This is peace, I told myself, sipping a coffee as the stars began to peek through the canopy. This is mine. But peace shattered quickly. I'd barely settled when I decided to stretch my legs, walking along the lake's edge, the water lapping softly at the shore. A few minutes in, I saw it. A trailer, old and rusted, wedged between 2 massive pines, its frame half hidden by overgrown brush. My stomach twisted. I'd been to this spot a dozen times, and this trailer wasn't here before. It looked ancient, its metal stained with age, windows dark and empty, but its placement felt deliberate, as if someone had dragged it here to hide it. I approached, my boots sinking into the damp earth, the air growing colder with each step. The trailer's door hung ajar, revealing shadows inside, shapes I couldn't make out, but they felt wrong, like remnants of something abandoned in haste. Who left this here? I knocked, my knuckles tentative, but no one answered. The forest was silent, but the silence felt heavy, as if it was listening. I stood there, my breath shallow, torn between curiosity and a growing unease. The trailer seemed to exhale dread, its presence a scar in the forest's natural order. I backed away, my skin prickling, and returned to my camper, the lake's beauty now tainted by the mystery I'd stumbled upon. Don't think about it, I told myself, starting a fire to reclaim some normalcy. You're here to relax. The flames took hold, their warmth a comfort, but my eyes kept darting to the trees, searching for the trailer's shadow. The sun had set fully now, the stars bright, but cold, their light doing little to ease the darkness. I sat, trying to focus on the fire, but the forest felt different, alive in a way that made my nerves hum. My grandfather's stories came to mind, tales he'd told me as a kid on nights like this. He'd been a ranger, spending decades in these woods, and he spoke of things that didn't fit the natural order. Lights that moved without a source, trails that led nowhere, people who vanished without a trace. The lake keeps secrets, he'd said once, his voice low, his eyes distant as he stared into our campfire. Some folks go in and don't come out, and some things come out that shouldn't. I thought them ghost stories, meant to scare a wide-eyed boy, but now, with that trailer lurking in the trees, his words felt like a warning. Had I stumbled into one of those secrets? The fire flickered, its light casting shadows that seemed to stretch toward the lake as if drawn to it. Night fell, heavy and absolute, the forest cloaked in a darkness that felt alive. I was stoking the fire, adding logs to keep the chill at bay when I heard it. Steps deliberate and slow coming from the trees behind me. My heart jolted, my hands freezing mid-motion. I turned, peering into the dark, and saw it. A light sharp and unnatural, moving between the trees, steady as a predator's gaze. My breath caught. It was a flashlight, its beam cutting through the night, but it moved with purpose, heading toward the lake. Someone's here, I realized, my pulse racing. I watched, transfixed, as the light drew closer, its glow illuminating the trunks of the pines, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. Then, without warning, it shut off, plunging the forest back into darkness. My chest tightened. Where did they go? I stood, my voice trembling as I called out, "Hey, what do you want?" The words echoed, unanswered, swallowed by the night. The silence that followed was worse, thick and suffocating, as if the forest was holding its breath. I waited, my eyes straining, but there was nothing. No light, no movement, just the weight of the dark. Then I heard them again. Steps, softer, now careful, coming closer. They were subtle, deliberate, as if whoever was out there didn't want to be heard. My heart pounded, my hands clenching into fists. They're coming for me. The steps stopped, close now, just beyond the edge of my fire's light. I called again, my voice sharper. "Who's there?" But there was no reply, just the oppressive silence pressing down like a physical force. For what felt like an eternity, I stood there, my body rigid, waiting for something, anything to break the tension. Then I heard it. One step retreating, followed by more, fading into the trees. They were leaving, but the relief was fleeting. They're going back to the trailer, I realized, my mind racing. That trailer, that light, they were connected. A puzzle I wasn't meant to solve. I sat back down, my hands shaking, but I couldn't stay. The forest, Once my sanctuary was now a threat, its shadows hiding something I didn't want to face. I packed up, my movements frantic, and hitched the camper to my truck, the lake's dark surface glinting in my headlights as I drove out, the trees closing in like a trap. The next morning I called the police, my voice unsteady as I recounted the night, the trailer, the light, the steps. They sent 2 officers, and I led them back to the spot, my stomach churning as we approached. The trailer was gone. The clearing where it had sat was empty, but the ground told a story. Deep ruts, drag marks leading to the lake, disappearing to the water's edge. The officers' faces were grim. "Whatever was in that trailer," one of them said, "it's at the bottom of the lake now." They found nothing else, no evidence, no clues, just the marks and the water, a silent tomb for whatever secrets the trailer held. They didn't search further. The lake too deep, the mystery too cold. I haven't gone back to those woods, haven't taken my camper out since. The lake, once a place of peace, is now a nightmare I can't escape. That trailer, that light, they haunt me, a question I'll never answer. What was in there? I see the lake in my dreams, its surface rippling, the light moving beneath, searching for me. At night I wake, certain I hear steps outside my window, see a faint glow in the dark. The forest keeps its secrets, and I'm left with the terror of what might have been, a mystery that will always lurk in the shadows of my mind. In the flat, unyielding expanse of an Illinois forest, I sought a night of peace by a small pond, but a flickering light in the trees led me straight into a nightmare. My name is Evan, a 28-year-old from Illinois, where the land stretches flat and endless, offering little in the way of adventure for a restless soul like me. I'd always dreamed of camping, of escaping the monotony of cornfields and quiet towns. So this year, I decided to try it for the first time. A beginner's trip to a secluded forest I'd found on an old map, a place promising a small pond at the end of a short trail. Step into the wild, Evan, find your peace. The trail was a straight shot, the land as flat as I'd expected, and after less than an hour of walking, my boots crunching on fallen leaves, I reached the pond. It was a disappointment, a tiny murky pool surrounded by swampy mush, the air thick with the scent of stagnant water and decay. I had no choice but to set up my tent further into the forest, where the ground was dry, the trees towering overhead like silent sentinels, their branches casting long shadows in the fading light. After an hour of sitting by my tent, the boredom crept in, a heavy weight that made the forest feel more oppressive than peaceful. Explore, Evan. See what the forest hides. I decided to walk around the pond, hoping to find something, anything to break the monotony. The other side offered little, just more trees, their trunks uniform and unremarkable. The forest a monotonous sea of green and brown, beautiful in its stillness but devoid of landmarks. A place where you could lose yourself without ever realizing it. By the time I made my way back to camp, the sun had dipped below the horizon, the sky a deep indigo streaked with the last hints of orange. I pulled out a small fire starter, its flame catching on the dry twigs I'd gathered, and soon a campfire roared to life, its warmth a fragile shield against the chill of the night. I heated a can of soup, the savory aroma mixing with the earthy scent of the forest, and sat back, the fire's glow reflecting off the pond's still surface. But not long after sunset, as the darkness deepened, I noticed a light across the pond, flickering through the trees where I'd walked just an hour before. My breath caught, unease creeping in. I knew there had been nothing there, no campfire, no sign of life. And yet, there it was, a faint mechanical glow, not the warm flicker of a fire, but the cold, steady beam of a flashlight. The sight sent a shiver through me, the forest suddenly feeling alive with unseen eyes. "Stay calm, Evan, it's just another camper." I tried to rationalize it. This was one of the few trails in Illinois, so it wasn't impossible for someone else to be out here. But the timing, the placement, felt wrong, as if the light had appeared just for me to see. I went about my night, my gaze drifting across the pond every few minutes, the light a constant presence in the corner of my vision. As the darkness deepened, the glow became clearer, its mechanical nature undeniable. A flashlight beam cutting through the trees, unwavering, unyielding. "What is it doing there, Evan? And who's holding it?" An hour later, as I sat by the dying embers of my fire, I saw the light begin to dim, flickering erratically, as if struggling to stay alive. And then, with a final sputter, it went out, plunging the far side of the pond into darkness. I stared into the void, my heart pounding, waiting for the light to return. But it never did. My skin prickled, a chill settling deep in my bones. I waited 10 minutes, the forest unnaturally quiet, the silence a heavy weight pressing down on me, but nothing stirred. I retreated to my tent, the night's events gnawing at my mind. But exhaustion eventually pulled me into a fitful sleep, the forest's silence a deceptive lullaby. Dawn broke, a pale gray light filtering through the trees, the air damp with morning dew. "Find answers, Evan, don't let the light haunt you." I couldn't shake the memory of that glow, its unnatural presence a question I needed to answer. I packed a small bag and walked around the pond again, my boots sinking into the soft earth, the swampy stench stronger in the morning air. On the far side where the light had been, I searched through the undergrowth, my hands brushing against wet leaves and rough bark. It didn't take long to find it. A hefty flashlight lying in the grass, its batteries drained, its surface pristine, no scratches or wear, as if it had been placed there just hours before. My stomach twisted, suspicion taking hold. I looked around expecting to find more. Footprints, a campsite, anything. But the forest was empty, the flashlight a solitary clue in a sea of green. After a moment's hesitation, I left it where it lay, its presence too unsettling to touch, and started back toward my camp, the pond's murky surface reflecting the overcast sky. But as I neared my campsite, something stopped me in my tracks. A figure standing by my fire pit, its embers long cold, a violation of the sanctuary I'd built. My heart leapt into my throat, fear gripping me. A second figure emerged from the trees, joining the first, both men, their outlines tall and menacing, though the distance blurred their features. I froze, too scared to call out. My voice caught in my throat as I watched them move through my camp, their hands rifling through my gear, picking up my belongings with a casual disregard that sent a wave of violation through me. "They're taking everything, Evan, and they know you're here." One of the men paused, turning to face the pond, his gaze sweeping the tree line where I stood, hidden among the trees. His eyes locked onto mine, a piercing stare that lasted only a moment but felt like an eternity, sending shivers down my spine, a primal fear that told me I was prey. He moved toward the trees, his steps deliberate, and then I saw him again, sprinting through the forest, his figure a blur of motion, coming. For me, run, Evan, now. I turned and fled, the forest a maze of shadows and roots, my boots pounding against the earth as I ran deeper into the woods, away from the pond, away from them. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop, the sound of my own ragged breathing drowning out any pursuit. I knew the chances of them finding me were slim, the forest vast and unyielding, but fear erased all logic, driving me forward until I collapsed, breathless. 15 minutes later, my body trembling as I turned. In the general direction of my car. "You're safe, Evan, you made it." I stumbled back to my vehicle. My gear lost, my camp abandoned. The forest claiming everything I'd brought as if it had been waiting to strip me bare. I drove away, the trees receding in my rear-view mirror. But the weight of that encounter clung to me like damp fog. The police were no help. I filed a report, my voice shaking as I recounted the men, the flashlight, the chase. But it led nowhere, the case as cold as the pond's murky water. You escaped, Evan, but at what cost? I think about that flashlight every day. Its pristine surface a haunting mystery. Was it theirs? A ploy to lure me away from my camp? Or did it belong to someone else? Another victim of the forest's hunger. I want to believe it was just a robbery, that their intentions stopped at theft, but my gut tells me otherwise. You came close, Evan, too close to never coming back. My grandfather used to tell me stories of the Illinois woods, tales of travelers who vanished, lured by strange lights into the trees never to be seen again, their fate swallowed by the forest's endless appetite. I thought they were just stories, but now I'm not so sure. The forest still whispers in my dreams, that light flickering at the edge of my vision, and I know deep down that I narrowly escaped a darkness far greater than I'll ever understand. You've heard them. Each story like a door opened into the darker side of America. But the most terrifying thing isn't what you've heard, it's what you haven't. There are still whispers buried in basements, lost letters, blurred, photographs and witnesses who disappeared without a trace. If you're brave enough to return, we'll show you more. More forgotten truths, more stories no one dares to tell in daylight. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us once again. Because in the next episode, we go even deeper into places where silence screams and shadows remember your name. Ghosts don't need to appear to haunt you. Sometimes just knowing the story is enough to let it in. And now that you've heard them, they know you too.